If you love Paul Harvey stories and the rest of the story, subscribe now. Jim was being a nuisance, so much of one that Mr. Didnt, the director of the school play, stopped the rehearsal cold. "What seems to be the problem?" Mr. Didnt asked. And Jim, eyes dancing with mischief, pointed to himself, feigning astonishment that he had been singled out as the cause of some disturbance. Of course, Jim was quite often the cause of some disturbance, especially of late, so it was only reasonable that the weary director proceed as in fact he did. For the better part of 2 hours, Jim had been making half-whispered wisecracks. Dr. Didnt observed, and then he exclaimed, "There will be no further disruptions this evening. Is that quite clear?" And Jim nodded, suddenly sober-faced, and assured Mr. Didnt that he understood. At that moment, the director felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for the harmlessly troublesome teenager. You see, Jim had auditioned for the part of the Earl of Warwick, an important role in Shaw's classic St. Joan, but along with the many talented young thespians trying out was the particularly gifted Peter Sims, and it was he who got the part. So Jim was given the inconsequential, non-speaking role of a monk who appears only in the final scene of the play, standing in the background. And thus, presumably disappointed and restless, he irresistibly interjected irreverent asides throughout rehearsals. "Oh, I must have a talk with that young man," Mr. Didnt silently decided. And so, at 8 p.m., following the evening's rehearsal in privacy, he did. The director said, "You know, choosing Peter over you was nothing personal." And the boy, rather unconvincingly, said that was all right. It didn't matter. "Yet your voice," continued Mr. Didnt, "you speak so softly most of the time down in your throat, swallowing your words so that what you're saying doesn't carry across the room, much less across the footlights." But what could I do about it? Jim beseeched. The director studied Jim's expression and realized from it how very much this meant to the young man. "Being heard takes more than being loud," he said. "Certainly Peter Sims has a big voice, but it was his personality, his passion to make himself understood, that projects what he says all the way to the back row." Well, Jim took it all to heart, and he disrupted rehearsals no further. And what do you know? The night of the play, he seemed content to stand quietly, peering from the cowl of the monk's cloak. Now Peter Sims, who magnificently portrayed the Earl of Warwick, became a newscaster one day, I once heard someone say. And Jim? Whatever happened to him? Well, his voice has been heard many times around the world. For, once upon a lesson profoundly learned, there was an aspiring young actor turned troubadour who impressed himself on his own and on each subsequent generation as few in all history have. The next time you reflect on that personality impeccably projected, you will hear amused in your mind's ear an English schoolboy swallowing his words, belying the brilliant future of Jim. "James, Paul McCartney. You mean the Paul McCartney?" "Ha ha, I mean the Paul McCartney. Only now you know the rest of the story."